Good morning all. I would like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone here. Welcome to all members of council that are joining us both in person and virtually this morning. Welcome to Ryan, who is joining us virtually. To all of our staff that will provide us facts and information so we can make decisions in the best interest of all of our residents, permanent and seasonal, in ACW, and to the members of the public in attendance this morning. Meetings of live council are live streamed on the Township's official website in accordance with the live streaming and virtual participation of meetings policy. By attending this meeting, attendees and participants are consenting to their image, voice, and comments being recorded and available for public viewing on the Township's website. Do any members of council have a pecuniary interest or potential conflict of interest of any agenda item that we have today? Thank you very much for that. We do have the minutes from the 19th of November, and I would entertain a mover and a seconder to adopt these minutes, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Hickey, that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council hereby adopts the November 19th, 2024 Council meeting minutes as written. Are there any questions of these? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you. Open forum is an opportunity for any members of the public to make any comments that they would care to regarding any agenda item that we have today. Please go to the microphone, indicate your first and last name and the agenda item that you're addressing, please.
Good morning. My name is Paul Bollinger, and I like to talk a little bit about 9.3. Isotopes. I don't know how many people in this room have an idea what isotope is. Isotope is a chemical element. Isotope have uneven numbers from protons and neutrons. Protons and neutrons are part from every single cell in your body. But your body doesn't have isotopes. The body creates cells with even numbers from proton and neutrons. So then came isotope along with an uneven number. For example, carbon. Carbon has 6 protons and 9 neutrons. That calls an isotope. Or chlorine with 35 protons and 37 neutrons. That calls an isotope. So with isotope we are able to kill cells with even numbers. The higher number from isotope, the higher number of neutrons is able to kill healthy cells, for example cancer. Cancer have a cell with even numbers. So isotope is able to kill the healthy cells. That's short form of isotope. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. To the coalition, I hope the council make the decision to join this coalition of isotope here. The coalition, I had more information before that plan came out from I have contact with different people. So isotope is, the coalition is here to help people. And we have a lot of sick people in this area and across the world. They depend on isotope. So please join this coalition and be a member from the isotope coalition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments, Paul. Is there anyone else who would like to make any comments at this time on open forum about any agenda? Seeing none, I thank you, and it is a pleasure for me to welcome Ryan DeVries from BM Ross to address us this morning on the Waterworks financial plan. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. Do you want me to share my screen for the presentation?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, I'm here to present this morning the Waterworks financial plan, so thanks for having me. Jumping in, but really before we get into that, a bit of background. The main reason for this financial plan is it stems from you having to apply for renewal of your municipal drinking water license every 5 years. You have 6 different licenses for 6 different systems, but they all have the same expiry date on them, and they're due to be submitted for renewal December 18th of this year, and a financial plan is something that you have to provide along with that renewal to support it. So that's sort of the background. Jumping into the plan, and I'll fire through a bunch of this stuff fairly quickly, but if you have any questions, we can address those after. So across the 6 different systems, there's 422 customers. The current net book value of all of the water assets of all of those systems is around $4 million. And in 2024, the replacement cost of those same assets would be around $8.5 million. The average remaining life expectancy is 57 years. The average weighted remaining life is 36 years. And your current rate of replacement is 28 years. So that's a good thing. You're currently replacing them more quickly than what they have left. In other words, they're not getting older, which is you don't want to see. Looking at history, last couple of years there were 2% revenue increases per year. Currently, revenue is around $660,000 a year. The cost to operate those 6 systems is around $360,000 a year. They're amortizing at around $120,000 a year. You have no debt, and your reserves are projected to be around $500,000 by the end of this year. So in generating the financial plans, we came up with several different options, but in all of those we had to come up with some assumptions in order to project where you're going to be in the future moving forward. So for operating costs, we inflated them at 2%. Energy costs, hydro, especially at 5%. Contracted service costs, which would be your water operators, Veolia, at 3% per year. And then we took growth to be about 10 customers per year starting next year, and that's mainly driven by Century Heights, which I can get into in a slide or two. And then your reserves we assumed would inflate at an interest rate of 1.5% per year. So there was one new venture beginning next year of $2 million for 15 years at 3% interest, and that was to fund Century Heights. I understand that you might be borrowing internally for that, but we wanted to show it in the plan and how that might roll out and what sort of internal payments you might have for that. Not stated here is the fact that you would also be bringing in either development charges or connection fees to offset that for these new properties, but that was included in the plan options as well. And then you purchase water from Huron-Kinloss for a couple of the systems. So those purchase costs based on history were continued to inflate at 7% per year. And then for capital upgrades, historically you've been around $60,000 per year. So we took that, inflated 2% for the remaining life of the plan. So relatively minor cost to upgrade water main and replace different parts of the treatment building, as well as that sort of rehab work. Plan goal is to develop a cost recovery plan to ensure adequate funding to operate, maintain, and replace infrastructure in the future. And to achieve that goal, we've provided 3 different options. The first one is kind of your base case, 0% rate increase, which is what you would look like in 5-6 years with no revenue increase. Usually that's a point of comparison, not actually something that we're recommending. Option 2 here was a 0.7% annual rate increase, and the goal there would be by 2030 that your rate of replacement would match your current average remaining life expectancy of your assets, so 36 years. Option 3 was a 2.5% annual rate increase, and in this case, the goal was your rate of replacement by 2030 would match your current rate of replacement, which is 28 years. So we're recommending either option 2 or 3 or something in between. You don't have to pick either option 2 or 3. You can choose a different number altogether. But the ministry will want to see that something's been put forward in the resolution. So for that, we've provided some suggested wording here of a resolution. And then the other thing I'll say is that whatever you do decide to pick, should things change in a year or 2 and you wanted to change those rates again, there's nothing that says that you can't. This is just that the ministry wants to see that you have a plan to begin with. You don't have to actually stick to that plan. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that overview, Ryan. I'm going to go first to Deputy Mayor and then to Councillor Milford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I read this, and I was got to admit I wasn't 100% sure of what it all said, but we are adding 2% now per year, are we not? And I don't know who to look for that answer.
Yes, you are.
Okay, well then I would like to see us stay at the 2%. I don't think we should go down for sure, and I think 2%, if everybody's used to it, would work for us. So that would be my input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Milford, please.
Yeah, I'm going to take a slightly different tack than the Deputy Mayor. I agree the 0% is too low. I'm wondering if the 0.7% is too low. I think 2.5% is too low. On page 9 of the report, you talk about the historic underinvestment, and that's accurate, and that's why it was at 2%. And it's been at 2% for 8 or 9 years now because we were in such dire straits, and the previous councils had not done anything, and so we were kind of playing catch up. So I think that 2% is too high. Now, having said that, I'm interested in asking you, Ryan, through the mayor, of course, about the sentence, or it's actually a paragraph on page 9, and you talk about how no capital plan was provided by the township, so you based it on a 3-year average capital spending with a 2%. Knowing that we historically have underinvested in it, by your words, and then we had to do catch-up, were we over-investing in the 3 years that you took, or is it the historic underinvestment number, in which case the number might be a little low? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can.
Ryan, please.
Yep. Just get back to the screen here. The historic underinvestment is a calculation that you can do to generate what annual revenue you should be generating, and it factors in the not having set aside this money for the life of these assets since construction, and it offsets that money set aside would be generating interest. So it's one way of looking at it. What I've found is is I like to look at the rate of replacement value. Just go back here. The current rate of replacement value with more weight as it comes to your current position. I find that it's more accurate. So based on your last 3 years, that's where you get this 28 years. So your last 3 years average how much you put back into your system, divided into your replacement cost in today's dollars of 8.5 is where you come up with that rate of replacement. So if you compare that to your average weighted remaining life and your average life expectancy, it's also a pretty good benchmark on where you're at. The problem with the historic underinvestment value that you're looking at on page 9 of that report is it weighs heavily on the fact that you might have 3 or 4 that are due for replacement next year, and if you replace those, then that value changes quite a bit. So it's I don't like looking at it with those numbers as much as with these rate of replacement values. Based on these rate of replacement values, I would say that your 2% historical is putting you right where you want to be.
Okay, and a
Further?
follow-up, please.
Yeah, I have a further up question, and then I have my own recommendation based on your answers, Ryan.
Yeah.
On that same page, you're talking about the treatment center at Century Heights that we're going to borrow money for, and over a 15-year period, our interest rate is 3%, but I notice we're making 1.5% on the money that we have in reserves. So I can't get a 3%. Is that actually a number that the township can get because of its borrowing borrowing power? Yes, because that seems like an awfully nice loan to get.
Okay, I will defer to someone else to respond to that answer. Ryan, would you have a comment on that, please?
It's on the very bottom of page 9.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up that report. So we're talking this paragraph in here. The 3%, so, I mean, I understand, talking to some staff at ACW, that the intention is to borrow that money internally from a different reserve. So, I mean, it'll ultimately be up to you guys to decide what interest you want to charge on that. The 3%, I understand from other municipalities, is something that they've been able to find. Sometimes municipalities, towns can tap into special reserves that most of us can't. But I mean, if you wanted to change that value, I don't think it's going to have a drastic effect on where the final numbers lie. But it will have some effect.
So no, that was a great explanation. If we're borrowing it from our own reserve, we could easily get a 3% loan, I would think, and still make more than the reserve. So here's the issue that I'm having with the 2%. When I came on council 9 or 10 years ago, whenever it was one of the very first things we did, and there had been a historical undercharging, and there was a great uproar when we came up with the plan, so much so that we've at the time privately said to me, we're going to have to change it. Everybody's so upset. And I said, we can't change it. We're here because we aren't charging enough, and let me do the talking, more or less. So I explained it, and I pledged at that time that it's not going to stay like this. It will stay like this as long as we need to, and I won't back down on that. But just like you said, it's a plan, and you don't have to stay to it. Well, we have stayed to it because we had to, and I don't see the need for the 2% anymore. And I'm one who's always wanting money in reserves. So I think that there's been a steep increase in municipal water rates. It's user pay. We cannot do anything about it. And I think it's time to back off the 2%. I do. I think 2.7 is a little low for me, but I'm happy with your rate of inflation. You've chosen 5% for your hydros, 3% Veolia. You've clearly done a lot of homework on this, which, you know, of course you did. 7% here in Kinloss. I would be more comfortable with the 1% based on statements that I made 9 years ago. And also looking at the numbers and being satisfied with your answers. And that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm going to make a comment, I feel that the water users never like surprises. They don't like a large bill. And we know the cost of the water replacement when something needs to be done, as commented, $2 million at Century Heights. I believe that it would be prudent for us to do 2.5%. And the reason for that is 2% is the replacement cost. And if we don't put some aside for the benefit of the users in our municipality, there will be a day there's a substantial cost that has to be covered, and that's when there'll be pushback. And I don't think it's in the best interest of our residents if we undervalue the replacement cost of what we know from experience has happened in the past and going forward. Or this is a decision of council. Any other comments from other council members? Councillor Miltenberg, please.
Well, if we look at that, you're not talking 2.5% actually per year because it's cumulative, right? It keeps going up. I know that makes it, I'm looking at the chart, it would go in 5 years from 1472 to 1709. And I know when I started that it was 700 and something. It's already doubled in 10 years because we were aggressively putting it up to catch up with our reserves. And I can't agree with that, Mr. Mayor. I don't think there's a need. I think we've been aggressively putting it in, and we have a plan for the new development, and I don't like to see, that's a $300 increase almost in 5 years. Like, that's a lot, considering we've been doing it every year for 10 years now. And that's my comment.
Yep, perfect, thanks. Councillor Snowden, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure who to direct it to, either CAO or Ryan, but is there an option 4 where we have a 0% increase in the water rates for maybe 2 years, possibly 3 years, and then increase it to, name a figure, 2%? And I question this, my reasoning for this is, you know, when we do our budget, I recall the last 2 budgets that we've had in February, March, I was in favor and endorsed increases because, you know, grain prices were good, people were working, interest rates were fairly low, but my purpose for that too was that this isn't going to stay. This is going to collapse somehow. And I believe, you can say what you think, but I think we're in a recession. I really fully believe that. And I feel that, yeah, the taxpayers have been hit a lot with the water rates. It's important, it's necessary, we all know that, but I think we have to, as a council, start thinking about, you know, there's a bit of hard times right now. They'll turn, they'll get better again, but if we could go with a 0% for 2, possibly 3 years, and then move up to 2% after that. So my question in a short form, is there an option 4?
Yep, so these 3 options are just suggestions. You can really choose anything that you want, and as you suggest, choosing a different rate for a number of years and then switching to a different rate again is certainly something you can do. The only thing that I would caution against is keeping that 0% for the full life, because as you see in table 7.2, your rate of replacement then drops to 45, which is not what you want to see. That's working backwards. So eventually you'll want to still increase that to stay around the 36 years.
Okay, thanks. Ryan, if I could ask a question, you commented about the replacement number of years. and it's at 28 years. Was that at 2%, or what rate was that at? And you made a comment that
The 28 years is where you are currently. So if you look here, you have your 2024 replacement cost divided by how much you're actually putting into your system after you pay the difference between your what comes in and what you pay for operating costs. The difference of that goes back into your system. So dividing the one by the other is where you get to the 28 years. And then we're looking in the table 7.2, projecting forward to the year 2030, what that number would be with a 0% increase, a 0.7% increase, and a 2% or a 2.5% increase. So that's where you see the 45, 36, 27.
So just to clarify that, so to stay at that 28 years or 30 years, what percent increase would that require?
That's the 2.5 to stay at the 28. The 0.7 you would drop to a 36, but the 36 is really what your average remaining is right now. So I mean, if you keep to that 36, the system's not getting better and it's not getting worse. So it's a good target. But you don't want to see that number start to increase. So in option 1, you see it going up to 45. That means you're not replacing things fast enough to keep up to them.
Right, I think that's a pretty powerful chart, and that it would reflect, you know, in that 2 to 2.5 range, however. Councillor Hickey, please.
Thank you. At the start of this, I was going to agree with the 2%. Early on, there was a slide that showed zero debt with I believe it was a 500,000 surplus, which is a surplus, but if you hear the comments from the mayor, it's not a lot when if there's a huge project that comes along the way to prevent a big surprise to the users at 500,000. So I'd be a minimum 2%, and I see the point of the 2.5 to grow a surplus to prevent that surprise down the road to the users. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Forrester, and then CAO, please.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. I'm just curious, what are the rates in Lucknow or Godrich? I know we don't have a lot of customers, but I just want to know how much higher we are. I know.
Ryan, could you
I don't have
respond?
it. I don't have it in front of me, but I can give you a ballpark that a lot of places around here are hovering around $1,000 a year. Some a bit more, some a bit less.
Okay, thanks for that. We have a user pay system. You know, the cost of what it costs has to be divided amongst those users. CAO, please.
Yeah, just to answer Wayne's question, a lot of the other centers have a lot more users, and we don't have as many users, so it's all about economies of scale. I'm just going to touch a bit upon what Glenn talked about, because I've been here when we had to send residents an $8,000 bill or a $2,000 bill because we had to change a new well, or we had to put some UV systems in, and I've been here when we've done that, and it's not a great thing for the municipality to have to send out large bills like that. So I'm a large proponent of increasing slightly as we have been. I know we have been increasing dramatically in past years, but the rates were relatively low. They weren't covering our cost. When I first came here, our water system was in a deficit, and that's where we had to send bills out. I don't ever want to get back to that. I think we need to increase slightly because our costs are increasing, and it's amazing how if we have to go to tender for a large project, it's always a lot more than what we anticipated. So I'm not a big proponent of 0%, and I think we just have to be cautious moving forward if we pick that right number going forward, because I've been there. So I just want to make those some comments. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. What has happened in the past? Councillor Miltenberg.
Well, we're all over the map here, and taking into account everything everybody said, try and find some sort of consensus we'll all go along with or can live with, I guess. I just can't see the 2.5% per year. I really can't. I'm looking at the water rates, and I know that will mean in 12 years, the rate has almost, it's 2.5 times what it was. Like, that's a huge increase, even if it is over 10 years or 12 years. I like Councillor Snoblin's idea, but I don't like the 0%. I think, and I don't like 3 years either. I could go with, see, here's the thing. We say we can review it, but we don't. Like, it just doesn't come back out organically for 5 years. We just don't. We can, but it comes and we go, yeah, that looks good, because we aren't all really thinking about it like we are right now, really. And I think that's actually a good thing, that we don't necessarily revisit our decisions. I would be happier with a lower rate for 2 years, because I think you're bang on with the comments about the economy, and I think these have been going up very dramatically. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'd say 1% for 2 years, 2% for the other years. I could live with that.
Great, thanks for the comment. CEO, do you have any comment, please?
This is actually brought back a year earlier. So we did consider that when we said that we don't bring it back. Well, it is coming back a year earlier. The only problem I have is changing some of the recommendations from BM Ross is I don't know where we're at with the rates and go from that. So Ryan would have to do a little more research on some of the other proposals that some council members are bringing up, but I'm sure it's doable.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you decide here, I can get you a revised report pretty quickly. You would just have to make a motion still, probably today. My only concern is that you have that renewal due in 2 weeks. So.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Snoblin, please.
In the spirit of compromise, Councillor Miltenberg offered something I think that is reasonable, that I could live with, the 1% 2 years and 2% thereafter till the end of the contract. I do, as Councillor Hickey said, there is reserves there, and if there is something major, we do have a little bit of a buffer there. And I guess I also would like to point out that Brian has predicted or projected 10 new customers per year starting next year. So as we look at this 5 years out, we could potentially have 50 new customers that would help with the economies of scale on costing that out. And I'm not certain, maybe Mark could be able to tell us, like, do development charges factor into that as well, that we would get some kind of benefit for water rates if the subdivisions go forward as projected?
Great, thanks for the question. CEO, please.
I had 3 comments in my head, and I'm trying to think which one I'm going to go first. The first point, $500,000, you said there's in reserves. That's not a lot of money. Like, something so simple can cost that, no problem. Development charge, I think if you recall in Ryan's presentation, it talked about us bankrolling the amount and recouping those costs from development charges and or the connection fee. Staff are presently working at bringing back a report to cover those costs that we're boring at the present time, and we're funding it internally. So that won't affect this project because this is the raw water rates for our existing users, but when you buy into the system, you have to pay that extra amount, and it'll be either development charges or the water connection, and staff are working on that right now. And the last comment I was going to make is the connections. You talked about the 10 new connections. None of us have a crystal ball. If I had to guess, I think that's being a little bit high because we haven't had any of the new connections yet. And if we don't have those 10 new connections, we're even further behind because it's projecting 10. But if we don't get 10, we only get 5, that can affect this as well. So I know you spoke about it being greater than 10, but in actual reality, it could be much less than that too. So there's a few cautions out there as well. So.
Thank you for that. A follow-up, please.
And I appreciate your comments. It's good to think about it from the other side of the fence. That when you mention that there's not been a lot of action towards those lots, you know, the market is soft. Interest rates have been high. The market's been soft. The interest rates have not come down. And let's talk about, you know, the price of groceries. And you got families. Like, if I had a family and I had to choose between groceries and paying my water bills and so on, it's a struggle. It's a real struggle. And I was the person that sat here, you know, 3, 4, 5 years ago saying, hey, times are good. People are in a good spot. Now's the time to raise taxes. It might not be like that for a long time, you know, for much longer. So let's keep that in mind. And I think we're at the beginning of that era right now. How long will the era last? Hopefully not long.
Okay, thank you for that. Deputy Mayor, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I go back to the 2%. Like, the people know that we're getting 2% per year, and it won't be a big thing to now. And if you cut it back, then put it back up. Like, nobody likes to have an increase. They all like a decrease, because at least I do. And so I think personally that if we leave it at 2%, that way we don't get behind the 8 ball on this, because it's just like I'm on the Auburn Recreation Board, and automatically it goes up 1.7 or 1.9 every year, and nobody cares about that because they know it's coming, they know it's going to be an increase, and that keeps us current. So, and I believe that same thing here. I think we need to keep current, and I know, believe me, that's a lot of money to pay for water. But in the same instance, the more people you add to the system, the more you use and more it costs. So it's a runaway train. So, but anyways, thank you, Mr. Ward. Or sorry, not your name, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks. Will you make that motion? And let's see where it goes.
Okay, so based on the fact that we're going towards a particular percentage, not necessarily an option in Ryan's plan, I'm going to suggest we don't do the recommended motion that's in the agenda. So, Bill, are you saying 2%?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'll turn that back on. Yes, I would move that we leave it at the 2% that it's already at and continue on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hickey. More discussion, and I'll just read the motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vanstone, seconded by Councillor Hickey, that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council hereby adopts the Water Works financial plan at 2% for the new water rates as presented by BM Ross. Is that kind of concise?
I was going to say not as presented by BM Ross because they didn't. So what I was going to suggest was that that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council hereby adopt a drinking water financial plan for the period 2025 to 2023 based on a 2% annual increase.
Excuse me, the date, the years.
2025 to 2030. Did I say 23? I'm sorry. So I will read that totally again just so that we're clear, and then Bill, you can agree with me. That Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council hereby adopts a drinking water financial plan for the period 2025 to 2030 based on a 2% annual increase in revenue. Is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, and I'll put this on, but we've already at the 2%, so it won't be an increase of 2%. It'll be the constant 2%. Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense then?
Everything's fine.
Okay, everything's fine. And so that was moved by Deputy Mayor Vanstone and seconded by
Councillor Hickey, you're good with that as read? Now, further discussion. Okay, all in favor of the motion as read? Opposed? And that's defeated. Okay, we are open for another motion. Councillor Miltenberg, please.
I'd make a motion that we increase it 1% for 2 years, 2% for 3 years. The final 3 years.
Do we have a seconder for that sentiment? And that is Councillor Snowburn. And I'll just give our clerk a moment to read the motion, please.
that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council hereby adopt a drinking water financial plan for the period 2025 to 2030 based on a 1% annual increase for 2025 and 2026 and 2% for the remaining 3 years.
CAO case.
It's actually 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years? The remaining 4 years? Are you good with that change? Okay.
And Councillor Snowden, you're good at that? Okay, are we all clear in the motion? 1% for 2 years, 2% for 4 years. All in favor of the motion is read. And that carries. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Ryan, for your comments and information to us this morning on this.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Now it's a pleasure to welcome Nancy Bridge from Seabach & Company to address us on our financial statements ending 2023. Welcome, Nancy.
Good morning, everyone. I think you've all sat through one of these presentations before, but I'll just kind of outline the plan of attack here. We give you a full financial statement package, but kind of consolidated down into this 2-page report for council, which kind of has a little bit more detail, a little more comparative years, and kind of hits the highlights without overwhelming everybody with multiple pages of detail. The statement figures are the numbers that you see in your regular reports from the treasurer, adding in your share of the joint boards, so the 3 Lucknow boards plus the Mid-Huron landfill, plus the reserve held by the Centre Huron for the Balls Bridge. So I'm just going to hit the main points. A lot of it is numbers you're not going to be really too surprised to see, but I'll kind of explain what makes up the bulk of the bigger numbers. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in, ask at the time. You don't need to wait till the end of the presentation to ask questions. So the first page is your financial indicators, which is basically your balance sheet, your assets, liabilities as at the end of December 2023. So your cash, $9 million, $563,000 of that is held by the other municipalities, Mid-Huron landfill cash and the Balls Bridge reserve cash. Restricted cash, about $3.2 million. That relates to certain of your funds, restricted reserve funds, your community benefit fund, and your provincial grants where you receive money and haven't necessarily spent them by the end of the year. That cash is restricted. You can only spend it on that, or you have to give it back to the province. So the remaining unrestricted $5.3 million in cash. Taxes receivable, $498,000, up a little bit from the last couple years, but that is the trend through all the municipalities I've dealt with. Accounts receivable, $869,000. HST rebate makes up about $453,000 of that, just because you had a lot of larger capital projects at the end, the last quarter. $120,000 due from other municipalities for either, for instance, the Huron-Kinloss share of the joint boards. Sure.
Yes, please, Councillor Milton.
Yeah, your accounts receivable, they're quite different, and they're actually offset by the quite a bit of different accounts payable. Like there's about $1 million off between, and they balance, they do, but I'm wondering, was that a timing thing?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the large capital projects. So if you have a large project in the works, they're big payable, and then you're also waiting on the money to come back from the province for that. 2022 number for accounts receivable, $1.3 million of that was your ICIF grant from the Dungannon Water Project. So this particular year, there's not a lot in provincial grants in your. There's $164,000 of that. 870 is your money waiting on coming back from your provincial grants for your holdbacks and your ICIP and Trillium grants. But yes, there's always a big variation depending on where you're at, and a lot of it is capital stuff. So.
Good with that? Perfect, thank you. Please carry on. And if council has any questions, just put your hand up, please, as we go. Is that okay, Nancy?
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So that's kind of the accounts receivable. Municipal drains in process. So these are your drains that are in the works but not billed out to the property owners. 368,000. You'll notice that's a bit of a jump from last year because you had a new capital drain ongoing. So there will be presumably some money coming from the province for that, and then it will be billed out on completion. Inventory, 62,000. That's a new number this year. Starting to track the fuel and the salt and sand that's on hand at the end of the year. Long-term receivable, 60,000. That is strictly tile drain loans at the moment, and there is an offsetting long-term debt for that same amount. Previous years, you also had some receivables for capital charges, and that I presume will jump up next year when you have your local improvement charges are going to be billed out.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Miltenberg, please.
And so in reading the previous report, I saw that there's a change in accounting for our asset retirement obligations, and
Yep.
they're reflected in what you're talking about right here. Not only for our landfill, but also now for asbestos and gravel pit renovations or
Restoration, yep.
reclamations.
Yep.
Can you explain to me what the gravel pit reclamation fee would be in our asset retirement
So
obligation?
that's down there in the liability section, the 1.8 million.
Oh, sorry, we're not there
Yep.
yet. Okay.
So most of that is your landfill. 833,000 is your ACW landfills, and just over $1 million for the Mid-Huron landfill. Less than 100,000 in total for your asbestos and gravel pit. So what happens is when you have a gravel pit, part of your license requires you to reclaim, or is that the word? Rehabilitate. That's a good word. The property when you're done with your license. So Ellen and Tom worked on those numbers to get the estimate, and I think the indication was it was not likely going to be done in the near future, and it wasn't going to be very costly when it did happen.
So further to that, Mr. Mayor, that I misinterpreted that. So those are for our gravel pits.
That's for your gravel pits. Yeah.
Got
So
it.
gravel pits in
73,000 or so. I think
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
73,000.
Yeah, around there. Yeah.
Okay, I thought we were going after all the other gravel pits, so that's fine. That's our
No.
gravel pits.
Yeah. So when you take a gravel pit and you start taking gravel out of it, you create a liability to rehabilitate that land at the end of the process.
Okay, good with that? Perfect, thank you. Please continue, Nancy.
Okay, so accounts payable line 2.3 million. Like I mentioned before, that number fluctuates based on where you're at with your capital projects. But 1.3 million of that is construction bills that were paid after the year end, plus the holdbacks on those projects. The other big numbers in there are 228,000 for your OPP contract, and 160,000 for your money due to Huron Kinloss for your share of the fire board costs and other charges they charge you. The rest of them are just your regular accrued wages and anything that you incurred in the 2023 that didn't get paid out till 2024. Deferred revenue, 779,000. Deferred revenue is when you receive money from grants, development charges, whatnot. The legislation requires you to not recognize them as income when you receive them. They're only recognized as income when you spend them. So anything that you've received from those things are sitting in deferred revenue until they get spent. So for 2023, you had a balance of 231,000 that was unspent in your OCIF grants, 301,000 that was in your CCBF grant, and the remaining 248 was your development charges that had been levied but not spent until the future years. In your general records, they're generally shown as similar to a reserve on your reserve transfer schedules, but for financial statements, they just don't go into revenue at all. They just come in when you spend them. Long-term debt I mentioned before was the Tile Drain loan that's relating to the Tile Drain loan receivable from the property owners. Asset retirement obligations we just discussed. And of course, landfill liability was similar, but so the difference between the landfill and the ARO liabilities is under the old standard, the liability was prorated by the capacity that's been used. Now, as soon as you put your first bag of garbage in the landfill, you create the liability for the whole landfill, and it gets recognized right away. So that's why there's a bit of a jump in those numbers.
Okay, Councillor Miltenberg, please.
Yeah, and this is not specifically mentioned on this page, so I think I'm in the right. It's about, was mentioned on page 12 in the other report about the OMERS surplus and deficit and how we don't track it because it's a shared plan with the province. So I guess my question is, does anyone track that?
The OMERS will have, I don't think OMERS, and maybe Mark or Ellen could speak more directly to that, but they don't assess your liability. They just kind of, you pay and then, so yeah, on their end they calculate liabilities, but it doesn't get billed through to you.
Okay, thank you. CAO, please.
The Pactos dry nomers doesn't affect the municipality.
Yeah, that's right. Staff.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So at the end of December, we ended up with net financial assets of around $6 million. It's a decrease from the previous years. That a lot of that has to do with the money you spent on your Wellington Street project that was kind of in process. So you're spending all this money, you haven't funded it until future years. So that's the decrease in that. Also, the increase in the asset retirement obligation liability affected that as well. So the net financial asset line is basically assets that will be used to provide services for the future, or cash will be converted to cash. As far as the tangible capital assets, so you started the year with a net book value of $43 million. We, as part of the ARO, changed the ARO liabilities. The asset retirement obligation gets added into your asset cost and then depreciated over time. So that 220 was restating those assets, the asset retirement obligation asset. 5.6 million, 5.7 million of new assets. A lot of that is your Wellington Street project and your other roads and bridges, as well as your Ashfield Park, the share of the fire vehicle. Those were the big ones. And your regular amortization is spent expensing these assets over their useful life. 1.6 leaves you with a net book value of 47 million.
Thank you for that. Councillor Miltenberg, please.
I have a couple questions about the tangible capital assets. The first question is more of a general. So they're entered as the value at the year that we bought them, and then they retain that value, and then we dispose of them sometimes later. And some of them, say, example, a grader has been, what do you call that when you take the depreciated out, and it's still, like, you have a number in here that's net book value of disposals and adjustments. So the net book value is not what it's actually worth when we sell it. That money goes someplace else. It's the depreciated value.
Yes. So the net book value that we're taking out of the TCAs is the depreciated costs. So a lot of the times when you're replacing a road or a vehicle or things like that, they're fully depreciated or nearly
Right.
fully depreciated. And then if you receive some extra money over that, that goes into a gain on the sale of assets on the income statement.
Okay.
Like if you're selling a vehicle, for instance,
Yep.
like that.
Okay, the second question?
Please.
That's an excellent explanation, thank you. And this again is from the other report, page 14. It talked about the tangible capital assets, and it told what it was, but one of them, the statement says, and the ones that are too hard to figure out, we give them a value of $1. I'm just wondering what tangible capital asset would be worth $1?
Well, those were, so when we brought in this standard, this is a standard that came in, I don't know, 15 years ago maybe. And so you never used to track the tangible capital assets. So these would be assets that, like for instance, a park that has been a park since 1922.
Okay.
You have no records on it. You have no idea what the cost is. Generally, the $1 ones are small pieces of land that no one knows where they came from, and there's no history on them. There's very few assets that were actually valued at $1.
Okay, thank you.
And a lot of the numbers at the time of the transition were estimated, sometimes based on engineers' reports or whatnot. But as you're replacing those assets, those numbers are estimated numbers are kind of going away and getting replaced with real numbers.
Okay, thank you.
You're good. Perfect. Thank you. Please continue, Nancy.
Okay, so our last section on this page is the accumulated surplus. So this is basically your equity, the municipality's equity in their assets and net of liabilities. So again, you've got 47 million of net capital assets. 3 million of that is work in process. So those are projects that are in process. You've spent money on the expenditures but have not funded those. So the 3 million is to be billed out as a local improvement, transferred out of reserves or otherwise funded by the general taxation. In this particular case, most of that is that Wellington Street project. There's another smaller one that I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it was very, very little. Of this $3 million, there's a $1 million reserve fund for that process, and a big chunk of it is going to be billed out as a local improvement. The unfunded asset retirement obligations or landfill liabilities, same thing, is a liability that is on your financial statement, but it's going to be funded from future reserves or future taxation or other funding. Your regular reserves are $10 million, so again that's an increase from prior years. The big numbers in notes, you're probably familiar with your reserve schedule, but the building department is about $800,000. Community benefit fund reserve is 2.5 million. You have a general reserve at 2.9 million, which is where your annual surpluses have been getting charged into that, and a myriad of other smaller ones and special purpose ones that have been around for a while, and you'll have lots of detail on those from your other schedules from the treasurer. So there is a intention at some point to review those all and kind of streamline the smaller ones and whatnot. So and then the other surplus, 8,600. So the policy has always been for the last quite a few years, if there's a surplus or deficit in the general fund, it gets transferred into the reserve and then pulled out in the future for other projects or to apply to the next year's budget. So the current year general surplus was $785,000 that was transferred into the general surplus reserve. The big differences on that, the cause of that surplus, the bank interest was crazy compared to the budget. The rates just went skyrocketed. That's been the situation in all the municipalities that the budgeted number was way under. So yeah, that was about $500,000, $400,000 difference, I think, in between budget and actual. You also had a good winter, so the road snow removal budget was substantially lower than budget. So the other surplus is just the general boards, or the consolidated boards. Mid-Huron landfill had a surplus of 8,600, and so that's your share of the Mid-Huron landfill surplus. So your total accumulated surplus of 53 million. There's no other questions on that. I would ask you to flip to page 2. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because I'm sure you would have beat these numbers to death on your other reviews of them. The only comments I would say is that these include the revenues, expenditures, your share of the revenues, expenditures of the joint boards that are consolidated. The top section of the revenue and expenditure line items are kind of as budgeted, but without your capital and depreciation lines, and then the bottom section kind of reconciles it back to the financial statement numbers. So as far as revenue, again, like I said, there's probably nothing here that you are overly surprised about. As far as the grants, you see the other capital grants. This is your OCIF, your Trillium grants, the New Horizon grants. The other non-capital grants, that are the last number in the section 341. That's your aggregate resources and your recycling grants, your drain superintendents, and some other little ones. As far as the user fees, nothing there I don't think we need to really comment on, other than you'll notice the road charges and recovery budget was quite a bit higher than the actual, and that was because there was some local improvement charges in the budget, which that project has been pushed off to the next year, so the revenues were not realized. So total revenue $12 million. Expenditures, again, nothing there that you really should be surprised about. The water and sewer, you notice the budget is quite a bit higher than the actuals. That was a budgeted amount for sewage inspection program, which was quite a bit less than budget. And the recreation numbers had a big jump. That was the Lucknow recreation activities were quite a bit higher than previous years, obviously because of the return from COVID. Otherwise, I don't think I have any specific comments, but
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Milford, please.
And this is a general question again. We have development charges, and we also have planning and development. And are they supposed to be, because they're not, and I assume it's timing, are they revenue neutral? Are those the two
No.
that offset? They aren't.
no. So the planning and development includes your economic development things, your master plan expenses and things like that are not something that you generate revenue from. The development charges are the specific water, sewer, road charges that are assessed to new developments and whatnot.
Please continue.
So then I see where we're getting income from development charges earned, but shouldn't we then also have expenses? And if so, would they be under each different thing that it was expensed to, say the grain or the
Yes,
road or the
so if you are transferring money out of your development charges, deferred revenue, into your roads, for instance, those expenses are showing up in your road expense.
Okay.
So in the financial statement, the deferred development charges are kind of in each category for water, sewer, or roads and whatnot. For this purpose, I pulled them out and put them all together just to highlight that this is what you've collected
Okay.
in deferred charges.
Thank you.
The expenditures you're right are in the specific department line items.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions from any other members of council to Nancy on our financial reports ending December 31, 2023? If not, thank you very much, Nancy.
Good, thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay, with that, I will entertain a mover and a seconder to accept the financial statements as presented by Seabach and Company for the year ending December 31, 2023. Councillor Forrester and moves, and Councillor Blake seconds. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much, and thanks again, Nancy, for presenting that to us this morning. 6.1 is the 2025 Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. It is for information purposes, prepared by our Treasurer, Ellen McManus. Any questions on this? I will go to Councillor Miltenberg, please.
Sorry, I swear it's like Christmas today. So many numbers to look at. We took a big jump, and honestly, I think they make it complicated just so we give up. But I think we're the oversight committee. But it does look like the jump is largely because we went to 100% level of support as opposed to the 80-something they were guaranteeing us. And I know that's based on 6 different things. One of them is the FIR return as of September 27th, 2024. Does our treasurer have to fill out some very onerous thing by September 28th, 2024? Because that's a really recent number that they're using to project our costs, or not our costs, our whatever they're calling it.
Okay, thanks for the question. Ellen, please.
So last year, the province moved from, historically they used the FIR returns to determine our allocations under this program, but they've moved to a hybrid model where they use the FIR return and then also our current replacement value from our total of our assets, and we report on that separately to the province. I'm not sure where that comes into their equation, but I think they're using more data sources than they have in the past.
Okay, follow up, please.
Yeah, further, because they cited 3 data sources that they used, which were Statistic Canada numbers, which I thought were fairly scarce for a municipality that's this small, at least the numbers they're using. So do you think that the jump, and maybe this is an unfair question, of 100% instead of 80%, which gave us another $200,000, is based on their new method of doing it? I'm just trying to decide if they're going to cut us 20% next year.
Okay, thanks. Alan, any comment, please?
I don't have an answer for you. I'd probably have to just go through the entire report, but it might even just be a phase-in thing, like how they're going from 75% guaranteed support to 100. If I had to guess, that could be the case.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. Any additional questions or comments on this for information purposes? Thank you very much, Ellen. The fee bylaw update under 6.2. We noted the changes at our May 7th meeting, and it's coming back today for approval in a bylaw. Is there any questions or comments on this? Not, I'll ask for a show of hands if we would consider adopting this in Section 18 as a bylaw. And that is supported by Council. I thank you for that. The Planning Department today is just a delegated consents. It is for information purposes. The Building Department is the Building Inspector appointment of Ashley McCann, and we'll consider that in Section 18 as a bylaw. And I'll again ask for a show of hands if we're in support of it. And that is supported by Council. I thank you. 8.2 is the Wilkins Limiting Distance Agreement that we discussed at our planning meeting, and again, I will ask for a show of hands if we are in support of considering authorizing this in Section 18 as well. That is supported by Council. Oh yes, please, Councillor Hickey.
I have a question for Joy, if that's okay. Yes. In this section.
Absolutely, please.
Just a little history. On June 18th, I brought up a concern for sewage disposal in the township with the previous CBO. On September 17th, there was a report to council that asked us to defer the decision until late October, early November, when there was a growth in master servicing plan coming. I haven't seen that plan yet. Are you up to date on that this growth and master servicing plan and where it is for that.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. CAO, would you have a comment on this, please?
Yeah, the growth and master plan is coming to the next meeting, okay, and then after that, I've had discussions with Joy, and there'll be a follow-up report after that growth and master plan comes to the next council.
Okay, that's fine. It's just getting to the point where we're talking about spending soon for 2025, and I don't want that to get overlooked, so I just wanted to make sure it was still in discussion. Thank you.
Sorry, Joy, I just jumped in.
Okay, you're good with that, Councillor Hickey. Thank you for raising that. Under administration on 9.1 is the council meeting planning statistics. The staff have provided us for that upon request. Is there any further discussion on this, or I will ask for a show of hands for consideration of this in section 18? Is this supported by council? Oh, did you have a question? No, a show of hands, please. Everybody good? Okay, and that is supported by council. Thank you. 9.2 is the Employee Appreciation and Engagement Committee. Again, is for information purposes. Any questions or comments on this? It appears to be working very well for staff, and thank you very much to staff for this. The 9.3 is the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition, the terms of reference and strategic plan. We have had a presentation to council, and are there any questions on this? I would entertain a mover and a seconder that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council confirm the intention to join the coalition as a regional collaborator, and then that there be appointment of an individual to represent the municipality. Mover, Deputy Mayor Van Stone, and Councillor Blake seconds. Questions or comments? Okay. Yeah, and we require an appointee on behalf of ACW Council for representation of the coalition. I'll look into that. Yeah, question or comment, Deputy Mayor, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are you already on that through the county? Because if you were, it would make it sense to put you on here as well. So that's my question. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I would move then that we appoint Glenn McNeil on this committee.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Miltenberg, please.
Sorry, but I don't agree with that.
It better, we have
Conflict of interest, I don't know that there is one or should be one, but I would sooner, if you're representing one, you have fiduciary interest to that municipality, not this one. Even though I don't want the job, I'm not entirely comfortable unless we put it up for review once things actually get moving.
Yep, I need to retract what I said. I am not on there on behalf of the county. This is for the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition, and I have no representation on behalf of the county on this. I apologize for my previous statement. I do not. Yeah.
Are you representing the Western Wardens Ontario Caucus on this?
No, that comes to an end in probably at our January meeting. So no, I am not.
Then I'd be happy to support Glenn being a representative.
Clerk, please.
So just to clarify, that was moved by Deputy Mayor Van Stone and seconded by Councillor Blake.
We did not have a seconder. Councillor Miltenberg jumped in. There was not a seconder. No, there was not. We do now.
Our seconder is Councillor Miltenberg.
That is correct.
Yes, we're all in agreement. Okay, I just want to make sure,
Yep.
because there was a couple things that happened there before we decided to put Mayor McNeil in the motion.
Right.
Okay, so.
Further discussion. Okay, so it's been moved that we join the coalition. That encompassed your motion, Deputy Mayor and Seconder Councillor Miltenberg, and that I be appointed to represent the municipality on that. That's the motion. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much. 9.4 is the outdoor play equipment policy. Any questions or comments on that? And if not, I would ask if council is in support of considering this in section 18 as a bylaw. Show of hands for this, please. And that is supported by council. I thank you. 9.5 is the appointment of a part-time...
I'm sorry, I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Blake, please.
no worries. Thank you. I did notice in the outdoor play equipment policy that it includes the alignment with the concept plans for parks. Should we also include in that policy that it includes the overall parks and recreation strategic plan as well separately? I know the concept for the parks is kind of a part of that, but the overall strategic plan is also something else as well.
Good question and comment, and I will defer to our CAO for a comment, please.
I think that's a great idea.
Process clerk, what do we need to do to...
Considering it's not specified in the bylaw that's presented, I would prefer if we brought that back to the next meeting for adoption, just to include that particular line. So, if I see the nods around the room, then when we consider the bylaw, we will skip this one.
Is that okay with you, Councillor Blake, that we remove this bylaw today and bring it back to a previous meeting encompassing your comments?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and I'm going to ask if council is in support of that. Yep, okay, we will pull that bylaw for today, and thank you very much for that thoughtful comment. 9.5 is the appointment of a part-time facility operator, trade vendor, and we would consider that in section 18 as a bylaw, and again, I'll ask for show of hands. And that is supported by council. The Community Safety and Well-Being Review 2025 plan, it is for information purposes. Any questions or comments on that? If not, we have nothing today under Water Department or Drainage, the Public Works. We've received the report. Any questions or comments of our Road Superintendent, Thomas McCarthy, on this? We're good. The Fall Tree Order for 2025. And as everyone is aware, we provide trees. The number was increased from 375 to 500. Staff, were all the trees taken and spoken for in 2024, please? Tom?
Yes, so it was completed by lottery and it was filled out.
Okay, and I think the lottery system worked out well. And I know we had our name in for them, for trees, didn't get any. That's great. I'm happy, and I think 500 is the right number to be consistent with that. Councillor Forrester, please.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. I'm just curious, why are they smaller next year? Is that just a fluke, or?
Thanks for the question. Tom, please.
When we received the order form, that's the size they were. I wasn't given a rationale.
Okay.
Just that the smaller they are, the easier they die, correct?
Tom, please.
It's probably more cost effective when they were procuring them than to have older, more mature trees. I don't really have a reason why they chose to go this way.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Snowden, please.
I wonder if someone could provide a little bit of history on the $10 cost per tree. Is that $10 cost been for a number of years?
Yeah. I'll speak to it and then over to Tom. We found when we gave the trees away, they weren't cared for. And so when we put a $10 charge on them, people take some ownership to care for them. So that has been in place for a few years now. And it appears to be working well, that people respect them because they had to pay $10 for them. And Tom, do you have additional comments on that, please?
I think it was said it's generally around half the cost of the tree. So you're, say 23 average cost, it could be a little bit more, a little bit less depending on the variety. I think we're just trying to recoup some of the cost.
Councillor Snowblin and then Deputy Mayor.
I'm not advocating changing this at any point, but if our tree costs keep going up and we're not, increasing the cost of the tree, $10 is a really good price, but even $15 or $12 is still a really good price. I'm not advocating that we do that, but I'm advocating that we might need to think about that next year or the year after, that We can't continue to lose money and lose more money and lose more money every year, even though it's a great program.
Okay, thanks for that. And I think, okay, we got lots of hands on this one. I'm going to go to Tom and then our CEO, please.
Just so we're on the same page, the price is staying around the same because the trees have gotten smaller, so you're suffering from shrinkflation.
No, that's interesting. CAO, how are you going to top that?
I'm not. Councilor Snowman, we updated that policy in October 2019, so just give you a heads up when we last time visited.
Yep.
Thank you. That gives me some context.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I'm going to go to you, Deputy Mayor. And I guess it's very, very important. And no one knows it better than Mr. Bollinger, the importance of planting trees. And as a municipality, we take it very, very seriously. So we are subsidizing the trees for the benefit of our residents. However, it's the right thing to do. A person plants a tree under whose shade they know will never sit. It's good for the environment. We're responsible, and our residents have some skin in the game. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's all been said. What I'm going to say is that when we brought this up, it was so people would look after the trees, because we did have some of them going in the ground. They planted them. If it rained, that was fine. If it didn't rain, they died. So the $10 just got them out with a bucket of water and watering them every so often. So I think it's a good deal. And as you say, if we have to put it up a little bit more, we can. But as long as we're doing all right at the $10, I think we should leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, good at that. Councillor Snowden, questions, comments? Okay. So, Councillor Milton.
Yeah, I think Councillor Snowden had a great point. I also like the shrinkflation point. I think for this year we leave it because we had shrinkflation, but I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to go to half the cost at some point, but not this year.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a show of hands. We're in support of the tree program of ordering another 500 trees for 2025. And that is supported by Council. Thank you. Councillor reports. Does anyone have a report that anyone would like to share with Council at this time? And Councillor Blake, please.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to put a more notice out. Ben Miller Hall is hosting a holiday cake sale at the hall on Saturday, December 14th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And all the funds raised are going to future playground equipment at the hall. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much for that great cause. Okay, I would like to compliment our staff that participated in the Santa Claus parades both in Goderich and Lucknow. That is really, really good to see, and I know many residents are very, very appreciative to see the participation of ACW in these parades. So for the staff that were involved in this and all the work involved, thank you very much on behalf of this council. Okay, we'll move on. Business, new business for future meeting. Anything that anyone has for future meeting? There's nothing for correspondence for direction. We do have 3 for information. Comment on that. We do have upcoming conferences. Councillor Forrester, Hickey, and myself at Roma, and myself at Good Roads. We'll move into bylaws, if that's okay. And we'll start with the 18.1, the procedural bylaw would be moved by Deputy Mayor Vanstone, seconded by Councillor Snoblin. The bylaw number 79-2024, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings and the conduct of the meetings, be read severally a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 3rd day of December 2024. All in favor of this motion? Opposed? And that is carried. I thank you. The Wilkins drain would be moved by Councillor Hickey, seconded by Councillor Miltenberg, that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 83-2024, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a limiting distance agreement between Wilkins Blake Heritage Farms, Inc. and the Township of Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh, and that are now be read severally, a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 3rd day of December 2024. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. The building inspector appointment would be moved by Councillor Forrester, seconded by Councillor Blake. The leave be given to introduce bylaw number 84-2024, being a bylaw to appoint a building inspector for the Township of Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh, and then it now be read severally, a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 3rd day of December 2024. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. We're good with consolidated bylaw?
The fee bylaw,
Yes.
yes. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, true. Thank you. Number 2024, number 85-2024, the consolidated fee bylaw would be moved by Councillor Forster, seconded by Councillor Miltenberg. That leave be given to introduce bylaw number 85-2024, being a bylaw to set various fees for the Township of Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh, and then now be read severally the first, second, and third time and pass this third day of December 2024. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. We'll omit 18.5 and move to 18.6, and would be moved by Councillor Hickey, seconded by Councillor Snoblin. That leave be given to introduce bylaw number 87-2024, being a bylaw to appoint the position of part-time facility operator for the Lucknow and District Recreation Department, and then now be read severally, a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this third day of December 2024. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. We do have a closed session today that is moved by Deputy Mayor Vanstone, seconded by Councillor Miltenberg, that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council move into a closed session in accordance with Section 239 in brackets 2 and brackets B and C and E of the Municipal Act, with the CAO and clerk remaining in attendance for the duration, the CBO for items 19.1, Public Works Superintendent for item 19.1 and 2 at 10:26 a.m. for the purpose of discussing personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, and potential litigation affecting the municipality. All in favor of this motion? That is carried, and we'll give our clerk 5 minutes, 4 minutes. Yep. Well, let's 4 minutes. you very much. And reporting out of the closed session, please, Clerk.
There is nothing to report.
Thank you very much. We have the confirmatory bylaw. Would be moved by Deputy Mayor Vanstone, seconded by Councillor Snoblin, that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 88-2024, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Township of Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council held on December 3rd, 2024, and that it now be read severally, a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this third day of December 2024. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried, and it would be adjourned by Councillor Hickey, seconded by Councillor Snoblin, that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council does now adjourn to meet again on the 17th of December 2024 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the mayor. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thanks all, and stay safe.